speaker here. This is Sam Wildman. He is a strategic projects director at the Mead Institute and is charged to build, launch, and lead projects that demonstrate credible action and help both members and the industry earn consumer trust. He grew up as the 8th generation on his family pig and crop farm, spent 7 years as a lead facilitator and project manager for a global food and agribusiness consulting firm, and 3 years developing partnerships between livestock and feed sectors and the world's largest environmental nonprofit, World Wildlife Fund. He lives in Ankeny, Iowa with his wife and 2 sons.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. You guys have had a full day. Hi, I see you over there. Well, thank you for sticking it out with us. I'm Sam. It's great to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity. Fun fact about me, I'm not a native Iowan. I'm from the other Iowa, Ohio, or if you were in the last session, the city of Ohio. Io, there you go. Yep. But as weird as it is and as strange as life is, my mom grew up in Des Moines. Both my parents are Cyclones. And the sessions earlier talking about technology and all the things we learn as we try to adopt. My dad has always told me this story of probably 84, sitting in Hilton, so high up in the seats for an exam that his solar calculator didn't work. So think of all the ways we've evolved in technology since the 80s even, right? But it's an honor to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about earning trust in every bite. We're really talking about consumer trust. This kind of builds on Dr. Newman's demand work coming out of the checkoff presentation earlier, but it's a little more multifaceted than that too, because none of this stuff happens in isolation, right? I did kind of italicize that word earning because it's a very active process. And it takes daily commitment on the part of everybody involved to make this happen day in and day out on behalf of producers, on behalf of Animal Ag, and we're really excited and proud to be doing this work. Let's start with an exercise. It's close to the end of the day. Who can point to the hidden tiger? Stephanie, you're not allowed to do this because I think you've done this before with me. Anybody? He's got it? Yeah, the stripes. If you look right at the shoulder, the stripes spell out the hidden tiger, right? And I use this as an exercise with groups when we do group facilitation, because if you look closely, there's also maybe a pair of eyes hiding in the trees and some other things happening. So everybody sees something different, and everyone has a unique experience, and we approach these things through the lens of our unique experience, and we value those experiences. They mean a lot to us. That informs our trust system. But we also can learn from each other and inform each other's trust systems. It doesn't go without saying that the risk of losing trust and not meeting demand is local. It's immediate, and it's felt in every community we operate in, right? I'm not going to talk about the infographics, just using the numbers as kind of that emphasis point. I will mention, though, as a staff at the Mead Institute, we represent packers and processors. I really work across the supply chain, up into production ag, down to the consumer level through restaurant and retail, really. And we represent over 330 packer processors across the country, running nearly 800 establishments, USDA inspected facilities. And so most of those companies have less than 100 full-time employees. So they're small, rural family businesses, and they're very important in these communities. The good news on earning consumer trust is people do eat pork. They like pork. There is demand. The consumer trust research that we do every year shows that it's a little different because it comes from different polling, different data sets, but 91% of consumers report eating pork at least once a week, 60% of them, and they really enjoy it and they want to eat more. But some do fall out. And so for those that do fall out, why do they fall out? the main reason we found, at least recently, is because of health concerns. I won't go into Make America Healthy again and all of the narratives and drivers and pressures that are out there. But when you ask these folks, do you trust that farmers and ranchers produce healthy pork? 56% say yes. That's a great place to start. We're not starting from zero. And it's because of the work we all do every day in the supply chain. There's a lot of data slides in here, and it's late in the day, so we're not going to go through all of them. But if you are into data and segmentation of consumer analysis, I'm happy to share these slides and share the report with Iowa State, and we can get it around to everybody. But I wanted to give a sense to everyone on this, and this is the health perspective of, do we trust pork, right? Overall, I would say yes, we do, 56%. That's a great place to start. You can see the breakdown on the right there across the generations. But for those that don't trust pork, they're interested. They want to know more. So how do we help them become adequately informed? What's the data that they're hungry for when they're hungry for pork? So we have to work through that. We work closely with Pork Board and others on understanding some of that and making sure that it works its way, not just into promotion, marketing, demand planning, in the supply chain as well. The interesting thing that we found in this research is animal welfare is a standalone, isolated issue. We know that on the farm. We know that in the food system. They see that as consumers. But it's also part of their perception of health. So when we think about the message and what it takes to share and make healthy food, don't overlook the role of animal health in that. No surprise, a third of them think that certification, value-added animal welfare standard should be the norm, but they're not willing to pay for it. So there's work to do there. We're going to skip through a few other areas that we measure on trust, and this one being environmental stewardship or social responsibility. Some call it sustainability. 58% of consumers believe pork can be farmed in an environmentally friendly way, which is great. There again, look where the strength is. If you look on the right-hand side here, the strength on the strongly agree and the agree as you age or get younger kind of tells where that trust builds over time as you have these related experiences with your food, with animal ag, and throughout your life. But it is declining overall as well. So we have to monitor and manage that carefully. In the stories we share, the message we put out, it's very important that these things are done in a way that is credible and consistent and transparent. And so we really focus on whatever story we share, whatever we promote, being data-driven, being credible back to the farm level, and being the voice of a producer tied to it, so that we're always working on that from a unified perspective in the supply chain. Food safety, safe pork. 55% of consumers trust America's meat and poultry industry to produce safe pork. Probably no surprise that Gen Z is the most skeptical that the pork industry can produce safe pork. That chart showed up weird. I normally don't go through all those segmentation charts, but I wanted you guys to get a sense of that dynamic across those areas. This is usually the only slide I show. And so in summary, what you just saw was the breakdown of these bars on the chart. When we look at the trust score of those consumers since 2022, you can follow that path to see where those things are. And it's anecdotal to me. it's really interesting that the thing we hear about the most in the media from customers, thus investors, thus supply chain, and all of these things is environment, climate, greenhouse gases, water, all of these things. But it's also the thing that has been the most stable and the most trusted when we ask consumers. I've always held this belief that in the pork business, I grew up in a hog farm, we forget who our customer is. At times we're in the consumer business, at times we're in the packer business, and at times we're all over the place. And this to me is a great example of, we know what the supply chain wants, we know what Walmart wants, we know what Target wants, Kroger, McDonald's. It's not always what the consumer wants. But trust and want are also different at times too. So there's only so much you can dig into that right now. We're still working on deciphering some of that in this. The line at the very bottom is plant-based protein. So if you're curious how we stack up to the competition, and you like beans, there's the trust in beans. It's a little lower. So we live in this trust deficit, as you've heard through a few sessions today, or it's been kind of implied. There's significant risk to that. But, I work for Packers and Processors. It's a for-profit industry, so we tend to tie things back to dollars and cents from a push and pull perspective. But there's also significant benefit if we can move the needle. If we move that needle from 3.6 to 4, you see there what the impact of that would look like in terms of pounds and dollars. So we're always working on this trust imperative. And to me, the most important thing that isn't said on the slide is the value of not falling. We can't afford to slip and fall. And again, it takes all of us working together in a unified way to do that, to earn that trust. I thought I was going to be the novel guy that was the only one that was smart enough to go to AI and ask them to generate a slide for me. Not the case. But I asked AI what it takes to build consumer trust. I don't know, probably ChatGPT. And this is what it told me. And I won't read all those bullets, although I do appreciate that it was bullets. To me, this boils down, building consumer trust is about character and competency. How do we demonstrate our character? How do we demonstrate our competency and meet them where they are in their experience? There's a variety of pictures here, all associated with pork. We all have a relationship with consumers, but that is not the same relationship they have with us. Think about that. We are all in a relationship with consumers, but it is a different relationship than theirs with us. In 2019, we started this journey called the Protein Pact. The Protein Pact was our effort from the Meat Institute, at that time the North American Meat Institute, with Packers and Processors, to say, what does sustainability mean to us above and beyond the environment? It's that full system sustainability, those items listed on that bar chart. And what can we actually do about it, and why? Well, the why is trust, right? We need trust in the supply chain, trust in the food system. And we also recognized right off the bat, we can't do this alone. We have to have a unified voice across animal agriculture if we're going to sustain our success and grow trust and thus demand. So we set out to create the Protein Pact, pact being people, animals, and climate of tomorrow. And you see what's listed there is kind of our, how do we know if we're on the right track? How do we know if we're getting there? It's kind of our litmus test we go off of from time to time. The idea here was to be part thought leadership and communication and part transparency through action. And again, working with producer partners in beef, pork, and poultry and dairy to make that happen. We have some great funding partners and investors in the Protein Pact who help us with all of these efforts, but it really helps. I can say this because it's got me out of a couple of tough spots. It really helps to have partners across the supply chain like this, when you're on stage in a room full of activists, or when you're sponsoring a meal surrounded by folks who don't see the world you do. But when you can ground it in the truth of what's happening and show the data, show the perspective of what's happening on the farm and with your food, it changes, it disarms some of that, and it changes the discussion. So if you're in the room, thank you for your partnership. We really do appreciate it. I'll touch mainly on the communications piece here today. Our goal is to elevate the voice of animal agriculture in a unified way. How do we unify the voice of animal agriculture? Well, through that segmentation, through partnership with the checkoff, what we've learned through that and over the years is it's the most important thing we can do with limited dollars and limited time is prioritize who we're talking to. Who is the audience that moves the needle here? And for us, this is the space that we go to influence the influencer. So these are our key audiences for the last 2 years. This year, it will probably change next year as things in the government and other things kind of hopefully stabilize or change a little bit more, or at least become more understood where it's headed. But really it is about sustainability professionals and supply chain partners. How do we make sure that animal agriculture is seen in the appropriate light for the good it does in the global sustainability discussion? Responsible and sustainable investment, that could be a climate discussion, it could be an animal welfare discussion, and it's everything from Wall Street to Wells Fargo to local banking and federal credit union cooperatives. College food service has been a very interesting place to engage because there's layers to the layers to the layers of how food shows up in a cafeteria on campus. And which lever you pull and how you push on that is really interesting when you dig into it. So we've focused on a few high impact events within the group NACAS, which is essentially the organizing body for how decisions are made in food sourcing across campuses. Registered dietitians has been a large push. We spend a lot of time with the message on the role of protein, the value of protein, and how animal foods support longevity and health. We don't, there's keto crazies out there. There's meat muscle mania. There's all kinds of things out there. We try to be kind of in the middle, but bring very grounded scientific kind of approach to why this stuff matters and what are practical ways to make it work through a dietitian's lens. We won't touch on the others other than I will say on the policymakers. At the Meat Institute, we have a team in DC that works on the Hill and in the White House, and they do great work. We do not have state and local offices. We don't have budget, capacity, resources to do that. Stuff like the Denver initiative that Cody talked about in the last session, we worked very closely in partnership with NPPC and other organizations on that. But other opportunities have presented themselves through some of these other engagements that led us to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which was an amazing place to sit down with the mayor of Nashville, the mayor of Chattanooga, Birmingham, Alabama, various places, and talk about the role of food in those communities. Our goal is to always take that kind of proactive approach, the voice of the industry together in that. We never go alone on behalf, it's never just a meat thing or a Packer thing, but always a surround sound supply chain voice, and really work that together in those conversations. I think this is my last slide, and what I want to say here is this is another one of those ChatGPT takeaways. How long does it take to earn consumer trust? It's a marathon, not a sprint, more than a couple of years. And that hits home for me because we have a tendency in this business, in this industry, to jump and react every time the market changes. And that's the nature of the business. But the long-term plays, the opportunity to stay at the center of the plate, to be the flexible, adaptable protein what did Dr. Newman say? The nuclear weapon of protein or of nutrition. That takes a longer term lens and a longer term commitment. So my ask of everyone here is continue to do what you do and do it well to the best of your ability every day. Be transparent in your actions. Share with others what you've learned along the way, and keep in mind the long game that we're working on together to earn consumer trust, because we don't want to see it fall to a 3 or worse than that. We really want to, at a minimum, keep it where it is and move the needle in the right direction. So for me, it's about these guys on the screen here, the 9th generation, hopefully, to someday farm in our family farm back in Ohio. But I want to thank you guys for your time. Thanks for sticking out for a great day today.
Do we have any questions for the speaker?
Steve.
Good presentation. I'm going to put you on the spot since you're at a swine conference, right? So I was at a presentation earlier this week that showed per capita consumption, right? And there's many ways to slice and dice, right? And they just happen to have per capita consumption. Poultry was at 117 pounds per person per year. Beef was at 58. And please don't quote me, we're roughly, right?
Yeah, sure.
And pork was at 50.7. Poultry's going up, beef's steady, pork is meandering. What do we got to do to take shares away from poultry? And I know you're the meat institute.
No, it's, well, yeah.
One protein against the other, but
So my gut reaction is you're right. We don't pin protein against protein, which was Dr. Newman's message as well. But you know, it's interesting. I've spent my career in the sustainability world, and in the environmental sustainability world, nobody talks about poultry. Poultry is not a sustainable problem. It's kicking everyone's ass because 60 days to market, egg to market, right? You got broiler meat, and you got, you know, a food company, McDonald's. They got much bigger problems with beef than they do with poultry, right? And bacon is just a great ad. So that's the lens I view these things through. From a market share perspective, you know, it's cost efficiency in the business, right? It's much easier to control risk and control cost in the poultry business. The market concentration, you know, there's just dynamics there that are different compared to pork. So I don't have a great answer, but that's my perspective on it.
It's just an interesting data point in the fact that chicken is the most consolidated, pork is next, and beef is the bottom. And when you look at those numbers and trust,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had a positive spin on it. I'm like 56%, that sucks. But, you know, and so. I mean, so.
The data slides, the breakdown slides, I asked the Technomic, the consumer research folks, to give me the pork data over the last year. The slide with all the charts going together, that was all animal ag. So that was give us meat, right? Which did include poultry. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So in terms of gaining or earning consumer trust, do you think there is a way to construct our marketing strategy, on one hand, our labeling strategy, and our nutrition charts on our products, so that consumers picking a product, reading it, can understand the health benefits,
Mm-hmm.
the health consequence, and the price to pounds ratio?
That's a great question and a great solution. Consumers don't think that way, and they don't care. It's flavor, affordability, availability.
Well, because
But-
1% of consumption is picking up the package versus
That's right.
food service.
That's right, yeah. So the question becomes, how do you take that and adapt those larger macro elements you're talking about into the educational component for college food services, auxiliary services, right? How do you make that dynamic work across Cisco, Compass, Aeromark, you know, the larger food groups there? I'll do my obligatory, I work for an association. I'm not here to make labels speech too, but no, I think those are great questions. Honestly, nutrition labeling, everything from any labeling, front of pack, back of pack, everything from a value-added certification, a new standard, something there, another checkbox, all the way to reworking nutrition labeling is so fraught with competing interests and complications and compliance mechanisms and voluntary mechanisms that it gets so confusing so fast that even for us as an industry, we say, what's good look like? How do we push for good? And do it in a way that's consistent and stable and unified across the system. So it's hard.
So back to the building trust, one of the categories there was actually like human nutritionists. So how important do you think it is for the animal nutritionist to be talking to the human nutritionist to actually, show the data that supports like the quality and the nutrition of that product?
Yeah. I think it's really important. The people that when we have those kind of RD discussions through Protein Pact, we often take someone from like AFIA with us, from the Feed Industry Association, to bring an animal nutrition perspective. It's not perfect, but it's an apples to apples discussion for them. And they actually love it. The speakers love it, the audience love it. We get the best reviews on those topics with those speakers. So I would say just anecdotally based on that, it's helpful.
Okay, on that, it's interesting from like an education standpoint. So out of Ohio State, if you major in animal science and have an animal nutrition focus, the year I graduated, there was 2 of us that graduated with that particular focus. Everyone else was pre-vet or vet tech or just general animal science. And we had to take multiple human nutrition classes. So we sat in a class beside all the people who wanted to be RDs. And we actually, I remember one class very vividly. We came from a meat science class where we talked about different types of slaughter. Came to this class and they presented on different types of slaughter and talked about halal slaughter. And they presented completely different information than what I had learned 30 minutes prior in a meat science class. And so there was that difference in education. And we had to take those classes, but in Animal Nutrition 101, not a single human nutrition major was required to take the animal classes. So obviously we're not going to change that today sitting in this room, but it's a very interesting concept, and that's, I think, part of why we see some of that disconnect too, because we know as we feed the animals and we feed our families that pork and animal protein is good, but they're not being taught that in their class, that we sit in the back quietly because we smell like pigs because we just came from the farm. So, and yeah.
That's great. Yes, sir.
Along those lines, how much, and we had a discussion about this when I was in the UK about 4 weeks ago, but how much of this may be the lack of incorporation of nutrition and animal agriculture in the junior high level and the grade school level and the high school level, and the fact that you're getting told different stories from a meat scientist, so I can appreciate from a meat scientist and then maybe a nutritionist, right, because of skill sets and just depth and breadth of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But are we focusing as an industry and trying to reach these people that are going to be the next, like David said, 5.7 pounds of pork with the new generation, right? Is that a function of they just don't want it, or it needs to be easier? Is it a function of they don't know where it picks? I mean, David said they don't even know pepperoni is made out of pork. So do we need to, as an industry, do a better job of working with school boards and working with textbooks and working with these things to at least have them understand how many grams, how many calories in a gram of fat or a gram of protein or a gram of carbohydrate, how to read a label, how to make selections, how to understand that protein is a driver in health, as many people said here. I think there's a hole there that needs to be maybe at least revisited.
Yeah.
Collectively, right? Our job as an industry is to educate. We're all educators, and we're all driven by the fact that if consumers don't buy pork, eat it, enjoy it, and repeat purchase, we're out of a job, whether you're at the slat level or the meats level. But I'm wondering, because I don't have kids in grade school, what they're learning, if anything, about production agriculture and nutrition?
Yeah, my kids are not in school yet, but I agree with you. I agree with the sentiment. I think that is a gap in any sector of agriculture. When I was in a previous role in the consulting world, we worked with the United Soybean Board on a project to understand kind of a gap analysis of ag in the classroom. How's it, which is a great Farm Bureau program, but effectively what is the miss and the missed opportunity associated with that, or the implication, and it's huge. So I think that's a definite need. The interesting thing from the association side is whenever those kind of discussions come up, and they do come up at the board meetings, that's a great example of the next generation very quickly becomes, well, if we're going to target them, we also have a labor problem. So let's talk to them about the value and the opportunity to work in this industry, and skilled labor, trade labor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden we're doing a million things, which we love to do a million things pretty good instead of one thing really well that is the through line. So
kind of building on Chad's comment, do you see as the new administration, the MAHA movement, everything going on, do you see that as an opportunity to open those doors? I mean, are you guys, the groups you're working
if we go
with,
quick.
are they starting to be engaged at that level? You see,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it appears to be a whole drive in our society today to look at human health and what really drives it, maybe redefine it. Do you see that as an opportunity for us to really maybe kick that door open and have that evaluated better?
Yeah, I think so. So I do not spend any more time on the MAHA stuff than I have to. I just disclose that. But my sense from talking to my peers that eat, sleep, and breathe it every day is that meat, if you use meat as the category, meat is good. We love it. Put it in there. More of it. It's the definition on ultra processed food that is going to be a crack in the brick for a lot of folks, for a lot of companies up and down the supply chain. A couple of ingredients here and there, primarily in sausage. And then, but to your point on how do we use that as a catalyst and an opportunity to drive an educational component into the system, I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Question, kind of changing direction. Going back to a comment from this morning, how the meat case, and especially regards to pork, has not changed much over the last decades. And talking about how new millennials who are shopping and are focusing on protein and even reading labels. A lot of people, you see a lot more 97-free ground beef and a lot less 80-20 that people are buying. Is that something that we've thought about doing in the pork industry, is labeling and offering more ground pork products like that and putting some of that lean versus fat on those labels? Is that a direction that we will be able to go and maybe appeal to some of those consumers?
Probably. I mean, variety and availability of, like, flexibility in what we provide that meets the need, I think is what you're describing, and adaptability to those changing needs. Yes, I will say Dr. Newman had this morning. There was a big ground pork push, right? You were there, right, Steve, when that was happening? That was before my days, but I think there are always those kind of opportunities. It's a matter of who's going to do it and how fast can it go, and does it need to be done by pork, or does it need to be done by the packer in the retail case?
Well, and to build upon that, Chad, what's the average marble loin out there for retail?
I'd say 2 to 2.2 max.
So that's 2 to 2.2 percentage points, so that's 97.8% lean, right? And I don't think we, as an industry, do a good enough job to say pork loins are a very heavy protein, low-fat, nutritious choice.
Yeah, but Steve, you could also say too, even as you bump marbling up to where you get recognized for flavor, juiciness, and tenderness, the caloric add is very minimal when you start to talk about just a 2% increase in IMF levels. You're not talking about 13% meat kill, right?
Yep.
Right.
So you get that flavor bump if that's what you want, and Yeah, I actually believe there's some truth to that, right? You're giving anthropomorphic traits to animals early on in life when the kid has a tablet 2 years later. 100%. Interesting.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions?